Okay.
Welcome, everyone, to the annual meeting of Harwood Unified Union District for March 3rd, which encompasses the voting which will take place on the 4th tomorrow by Australian ballot. I'm Rick Rayfield. I was the moderator until we choose a new moderator this year. That could be me. It could be somebody else. That will be one of our first orders of business. This is a combination of primarily an informational meeting, so you won't need much moderating. You'll be talking to these school board officials and asking them your questions, and they will be answering you with information rather than debating particular items. Okay, the debate comes tomorrow at the polling booth. So remember to get up tomorrow morning and go vote somewhere. Okay. So I'm going to hand the gavel over to somebody else to run the election of a moderator for the ensuing year for the district.
Can I have a nomination for a moderator?
Rick Rayfield.
Okay, do I get a second? Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Oh, hang on. You should see if there are other nominations.
Any other nominations for moderator?
Hearing none.
Hearing none and seeing none. Rick
Ask
will
for a vote.
We'll vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. I'm back in the chair for another whole year, which is usually about an hour for if anyone else wants the job. It's good. Just to be clear, this is largely informational. We'll be hearing from the officers. I will only step in if I feel someone is taking up more time for information and we have a limited amount of time and energy for these meetings. And I may ask you to be a little bit briefer. That's the only thing I've usually done for the first part of the meeting. As we're going to be hearing from the various district officers. However, we do need to elect a clerk for a one-year term. That doesn't start tonight like my term does. They don't work for as long. They don't start till July 1st. And that gives time for the current clerk to hand over the job to next year's clerk. So is there nominations for clerk for the ensuing year to commence on July 1st, 2025?
We're nominating Alexia.
And just informational, the current clerk is Alexia Vinafra, and she's indicated a willingness to continue in that role.
I nominate Alexia.
We have
All right.
two nominations. I'll take the second one as a second
All right.
for the
we have-
nomination. Are there any other nominations for the office of clerk commencing on July 1st, 2025? Hearing none, let's proceed to a vote for
Alexia Vinafra.
Vinafra. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? It was unanimous and she was elected for her term commencing in July. Congratulations, Alexia. We need to elect a treasurer also commencing service on July 1st. Are there nominations for treasurer for the Unified Union School District?
And just a point of clarification, the current treasurer is Laura Titus.
Is she willing to run again? She is. Yeah, nominate Laura Titus. I'll second that.
Nomination in 2 seconds. Are there any other nominations besides Laura Titus? In that case, all those in favor of electing Laura Titus as treasurer of the Unified Union School District for the ensuing year on July 1st, signify by raising their hand. Down hands, please. Anyone opposed? It is unanimous. And she'll start working again, continue working on July 1st. So that was the first article. We nominated 3 officers that get elected. The second article is to receive and act on the reports of the district officers. And this is we don't have any motions to make here. We can discuss just about anything you wish to discuss with the officers as they present their reports to you. But let them give their report before you interrupt, please. So do we have a list of who's going to report first, second, third?
Lisa's gonna give she's gonna give our report.
Okay.
Finance.
Identify yourself and give your report, please.
Yeah, pull yours up.
But don't put
You can run it from you.
yourself on.
There it
You
is.
are.
And let me move.
Well, thank you everybody for coming this evening and for this opportunity to share our budget presentation for fiscal year 26.
Actually, I'm going to turn off my mic and you turn your mic on.
Testing, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
it's much
we're
better.
good to go.
Thank you.
Sound if there's any questions online.
Okay, but why isn't I not presenting? Oh, there we go. A little slow. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to be able to give an overview quickly of Harwood Unified Union High School, Harwood Unified Union School District. Our current school year, we have 1,814 students pre-K through 12. Of K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade is 1,613, and we have current enrolled 201 pre-K students. We have 7 campuses, 8 schools, counting Harwood High School, Harwood Middle School, and Harwood and Crossroad Middle School as two of our middle schools. I wanted to be able to present our enrollment over the last couple of years by school. You'll see fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24, and fiscal year 25. Our K through 12 by school. The column all the way to the right is the current school year, and then all the way to the left we have our pre-K enrollment. What I wanted to display is our enrollment trends in total by the last 4 years, last 3 years, including our projection for fiscal year 26. This is an estimate, an early estimate. We don't have all the pre-K enrollments finalized, so this is a very early estimate, but you'll see we are looking at a slight decrease in fiscal year 26, approximate, as of today, approximately 22 headcounts or 1%. Our school district covers 6 rural communities: Duxbury, Facein, Moortown, Waitsfield, Warren, and Waterbury. And currently on payroll, we have 362.73 full-time equivalent employees. The breakdown of those employees are by category. You'll see I've displayed that as well, and what makes up that 362.73. Now, FTEs, which is what's full-time equivalents is always a snapshot in time. So right now, this is what we currently have on payroll. This is not including any vacancies. And this changes daily, weekly, monthly. So this is what we currently have on payroll as of 2/15/2025. And you'll also see what that percentages of what those categories make up of those percentages all the way to the right on the pie chart. Harwood Unified Union School District's rankings. We are, of our 8 schools, all of our schools are in the 50% top in Vermont ranked based on US World News. I put a link in there and you can just click on that and go see how all of our schools are ranked, but our elementary schools rank very high, Waitsfield being number 3, Warren 9, Moortown 10, and so on. Both of our middle schools are ranked out of the 66, where they're ranked very good. Harwood is at number 30 and Crossett Brook is number 16. And we are ranked number 12 in the state for high school students, for high schools. Our budget forecast for fiscal year 23, we focused on cost containment. While we're looking at future expenses, how can we contain expenses going forward and what we need to be able to do going forward, not knowing what's happening within the state and federally, we're not sure what's happening. So we really need to focus on cost containment. This is a very responsible budget. Our administrators, myself and Mike, started this process with the board as early as September and working through all of the numbers and to be able to see what is what we could project for fiscal year 26. It is a conservative budget, again, focusing on cost containment. And with most of the towns are forecasting to have a decrease in tax rates. The proposed fiscal year 26 budget goals charge from the board was, we had 4 goals. I'm just trying to move this so I can read my slide. We had 4 goals. We wanted to be able to make sure that we stay below the cost, the excess spending threshold or cost per student, per pupil. That excess spending threshold is being brought back in as of fiscal year 26, and we want to make sure we do not exceed that because there are penalties. We also wanted to limit our year-over-year budget growth to 2.75%. The third goal was to make sure that we were continually offering academically rigorous programming for all of our students. And the fourth goal was to provide resources that are valuable and relevant, engaging and inclusive for all of our students and all of the learning experiences that we offer. I wanted to give you a snapshot of our comparison, our 4-year budget comparison and our projected fiscal year 26 in relation to inflation. So year-over-year budget projection for fiscal year 26, we're looking at a 2.75% increase in our expenses. And that's in line with the forecast. It was, inflation was 2.1%, but with everything happening right now, it could go up to 2.3. And again, this is an estimate for fiscal year 26. Our overall budget for fiscal year 26 with a 2.75% year-over-year expense budget, we are looking at $49.2 million. And our cost drivers, our major cost drivers for that budget was our wages based on negotiating contracts, CBAs, health insurance. We've been experiencing double-digit health insurance increases, which is part of a consortium with the state. We have no control over that. This year it was 11.9%. Last year was over 16%. And we've been seeing double-digit numbers in health insurance. Our property liability insurance has increased with, unfortunately, with the 2 floods that we had at Moortown and Crossett Brook. Moortown having 2 floods, our insurance has gone up. Also, contract services was a major cost driver. Our special education transportation increased by 39%, and our added district services increased as well. It went up by 19%. Spending decreases, and I'll go over this in more detail in the latter part of my presentation, but we were looking at reducing a number, approximately 16 to 20 full-time equivalents. Many of that also is part of our salary vacancy and not filling vacant positions. Reduction in building operations and reduction in instructional library and technology resources. We are looking at almost a 7% increase in our revenue forecasted for fiscal year 26. And again, that is a forecast. We never quite know how much we will get in for our special education extraordinary reimbursement. Right now, we're projected $1.7 million. It could be more, it could be less. That's a number for anything that we exceed 67,638. When we reach over that number, then we get 95% back. So that number is in flux every year. What we're looking at is a projection, but which is wonderful for fiscal year 26. We are looking at an increase in our revenue. What I've done is, and I've displayed this in many of my presentations, this is the large category expense budget by buckets. You'll see what we were projected for fiscal, or what our approved budget for fiscal year 25 was, which was $47.8 million. If we had a level service with no cuts and just continued with our level service and budgeted all the increases, we would be looking at a $5.3 million budget, year-over-year budget. With the charge of 2.75 year-over-year from the board, we are looking at a $49,209,926 budget, or $49.2 million. Again, a 2.75% year-over-year increase and a $1.3 million increase over last year. In working through how we establish our homestead tax rate, the methodology working through the numbers, we are looking at our educational operational budget of $49.2 million, again, a 2.75% year-over-year increase. You net out our expected revenue, which is $8 million, and that leaves us with our educational spend. And that's an important number. That educational spend, $41.1 million, is a 2.01% increase. And that's tied to property taxes. So that's very important. Even with a year-over-year increase of 2.75% year-over-year expense budget, our educational spend, because you net out the revenue, is only a 2% increase. When you divide that by our long-term weighted average students, or our head count, or our equalized pupil, which is our weighted student count, which is 2,659.72, you take that and divide that by our educational spend, and you then get our cost per pupil, our weighted cost per pupil. If you recall, in fiscal year 25, the current year, Act 127 added weights to students. As an example, English language learners were 0.20. Now with Act 127, the new weights are 2.49. So there's additional weights. You can look at the weights at the end of my presentation. There's more resources, and you'll see the change in weights from fiscal year 24 to 25 and what's projected for 26. The yield is given to us by the legislatures. This was projected in our December 1st tax letter that came out. This is an estimate. It's not finalized until the end of spring. What they're projecting right now, and what we warned, we forecasted at $8,553. When you take that number and divide it by our educational spend per pupil, you're going to come up with our district tax rate of $1.81. This year, if you recall, we received a taxing capacity discount for the next 5 years. In fiscal year 26, we'll be in our second year. And the current year in fiscal year 25, we're receiving 9 cents. In fiscal year 26 projection, we would be receiving 7 cents, because the next 5 years, it decreases 20%. However, in fiscal year 26, the state is doing a statewide adjustment. So we need to adjust that 7 cents taxing capacity discount, and it actually increased to 10 cents for fiscal year 26. We got a little bump up. That was given to us because with the new weights in the current year, which was part of H850 and part of Act 127, our district was negatively impacted with the new weights of the students, with the larger weights for English language learners and poverty students that negatively impact our district. So for the next 5 years, we're given a taxing capacity discount. In fiscal year 26, it's year 2. So we have 3 years beyond that. When you apply that 10 cents taxing capacity discount, that then drops our homestead tax rate to $1.71. One thing I do want to point out is our excess spending threshold is projected for fiscal year 26 of $15,926, and we are currently at $15,485.88. So we're close to that number, but we're cognizant of that number, and we're keeping watch of that number. As I mentioned earlier, our educational spending comparison and compared to the last 2 years is phenomenal this year, projected for fiscal year 26. We're looking at a 2% increase versus last year, 4.84%, and the year prior, 8.66%. Again, that spending, educational spend, influences the property tax rate. So that's important. Next slide. The budget reductions we are looking at, the staff reductions, I mentioned we are looking at approximately $2 million in staffing reductions, 16 to 20 full-time equivalent positions, and they range within Student support services, classroom teachers, due to consolidation in Brookside, we're consolidating some classes and reducing from 4 classes down to 3 classes. We're looking at reducing central office and administrative leadership, nursing, library, and art in areas where we're overstaffed by the EQS. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, current and vacant positions that we won't be filling. So I'll be using some of my vacancy factor. Program and service adjustments. We had a reduction in instructional resources of $35,000, library and technology resources of $38,000. We had administrators actually look at what they want to be services for software and what they don't want to continue with any longer, and we were able to have some cost efficiencies across all of our schools. We also, unfortunately, for next year only, we're going to be looking at what we can do in the future, but we had to eliminate summer academies. But we will be offering extended year services based on IEPs, but our expanded over the last couple of years during COVID and post-COVID, we expanded our summer academies to the tune of $325,000, which were funded for the last 2 years from ARP ESSER funding. And since we no longer have that funding ended September 30th, 2024, we wouldn't be able to shift those expenses onto the general fund and afford those expanded summer academies. So we will be looking in the future on how we can address those needs in the future. Operational changes, we are looking at transportation efficiencies and adjustments. We are going to be achieving savings in our transportation by reducing the number of buses, and then also reduction in building and operational resources. A large chunk of that, $135,000, was due to radon testing that we spent this year, $75,000. So there's a good chunk of that. But a lot of it also was cost efficiencies and reduction of supplies and where we can cut back in operations. I just want to remind based on the current ed formula, what actually impacts what impacts taxes. So our overall expense budget impacts as taxes, the amount of revenue received, the number of students, or our calculated per statutory equation, which is our long-term weighted average. That's part of an impact. The yield, and again, the yield is not finalized until the end of spring, but our estimated yield we use until we finalize it. Any incentives or penalties that we receive, we actually are receiving an incentive, the taxing capacity discount, and then also the common level of appraisal plays as a part of a taxing impact of our budget. With our 2.01% educational spend increase, how does that calculate into our taxes forecasted for fiscal year 26? We are looking at most of the towns seeing a taxing decrease because of the statewide adjustment this year. However, unfortunately, Facein is looking at an increase in their taxes. Their CLA plummeted from fiscal year 25 to projected fiscal year 26. It dropped 23% in comparison to Waitsfield, Warren, and Waterbury. They only dropped 14%. So unfortunately, Facein is going to be receiving an estimated increase in their taxes based on the fair market value of their homes in the grand list over the last 2 years of what homes have been selling in Facein. I did go to the select board meeting last week or the week before and met with the select board and explained all this information to them. So, and I've also reached out to them. If they have any additional questions or concerns, they can, again, reach out to me. So in comparison to our budget forecast for the tax implications from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26, you'll see there's a big change. So we are seeing a major change in all of our towns except Facein of a decrease in our taxes based on our educational spend. I wanted to remind everybody that everybody can apply for a tax reduction if they go to the Vermont Department of Taxes and look for or call and to be able to go to that and be able to have, there's an income sensitivity and you can apply for a tax incapacity discount. Numbers to know, our expenditure budget that we're putting out to vote tomorrow is $49.2 million. Our revenues with an increase of almost 7% is $8 million. Our educational spend, which is only a 2.01% increase, which is linked to our taxes, our homestead tax rate is 41.1 million. Our long-term weighted average or our equalized pupil is 2,659.72. And our educational cost per student is 15,485.88. This is just a sample of what our articles on the ballot look like tomorrow. The Article 5 is asking for a $49.2 million budget, which is only a 55% increase in our cost per pupil over the current year. This just spells out what the article is. It's 49,209,927. And again, our cost per pupil, which is only a 1.55% higher than the current year. Article 6 is asking us to assign our unaudited fund balance of $500,000 to our maintenance reserve so we can plan on capital improvements in the future. Our capital budget is roughly around $2 million. We're finalizing some projects and the claims with the insurance company, but it is roughly about $2 million, and we're asking the public for our fund balance of $500,000 to be able to transfer that $500,000 into our maintenance reserve for future capital improvements. I encourage everyone to get out and vote tomorrow. Our voting locations are listed here and also on our website within all of our towns. Oops. And I'm open for questions. And just also there's additional information that I always include in my presentations, and I encourage everyone to go to these, and here are the weights as well. This will be listed. This will be listed.
I'll call on you and please give us your name so we know who's speaking. Lisa, why don't you put that down and then I'll use, you can mute and turn your sound on.
First chair will
Yes.
set up right here. I see
You
one
might
hand up.
know if we don't have a, this is our speaker.
Microphone.
Microphone.
Yeah.
Usually like to hide from the cameras.
We all do.
Thanks for coming.
My name is David Specht. I'm a resident of Duxbury. And the first thing I would like to do is thank all of the board members that are volunteering their time to work for the community. It is something that most people are not running to do. And in fact, in Duxbury,
Board member over there.
so I applaud your effort in doing this.
Thank you.
And I have not run to do it either. I have some questions to the director. You said there were 362.72 employees. How many, I missed how many students there were. I'm looking for the student to staff ratio.
1,814 students this year. 1,814.
I don't have my calculator, so what is that ratio?
I can do it right here.
And
Are you teachers, staff, or
total staff, the total student to staff ratio, including everybody.
How many teachers was it? 362?
No, our teachers are 220, but total staff is 368.
The total staff.
Right.
So do that right. So. 14 divided by
I normally don't do
362,
staff.
Mhm.
5.01.
What about teachers? You look at teachers. What were teachers?
200. 18, 14, divided by 8.24 teachers.
That's usually.
So 5.01, so that is drastically different than what I heard on a VPR session saying that Vermont's average student to staff ratio was 3.6. Vermont's average.
Yeah.
And the nearest state average was Maine at 4.8, which made me say, the elephant in the room is staff costs and why are we so much lower? But your number you said was,
5.01 is full staff to full student.
so that is much better than this
state
this
average.
district is much better than the state average.
And that is probably in part because towns with even smaller schools have the issue of they can't get away with they have to have all those positions filled, so that would make that.
Okay. What is I don't know if this goes to Lisa, what is the minimum and maximum class size? Is that in your purview or is that?
That would be under my superintendent. So,
Oh,
so the state does not have a mandated minimum class size. I'm on the State Commission for the Future of Public Education, which is a legislative commission, and that's one of the recommendations of superintendents we've made, that we should have minimum class sizes. Our class sizes are dictated by other state statutes. So for elementary, roughly, we can't have more than 20 students per class. For secondary, 25. There's some exceptions for physical education. Generally, our district is around 18 students per class. I think that's our average.
okay, those are the numbers. I'm a baby boomer. When I went to school, the numbers were way larger,
Yes.
way larger. So I'm saying, when I'm looking at costs, I'm wondering how much are we spending? What are the class sizes? What opportunities do we have to reduce costs by increasing the class size, which will result in staff reductions?
And
I understand.
we're pretty close to what the current state requirements are.
We've just done that in Brookside. By eliminating 3 teachers and 3 classrooms.
Can I add something? Also, I think it's important to keep in mind that some of the smaller schools, we have multi-grade classrooms. And so it's difficult to consolidate classes when we already have 3
Consolidated
classes together. Now, that isn't to say that in the future, there might be changes in the school configurations to be able to have more students in one building and therefore more efficiency of scale.
Okay,
But it is a good point and something
It's a
that
very
is
good
under
point.
consideration.
Yeah.
And I will say, my parents were also baby boomers, and one of the big differences is some of the other requirements, for example, special education. Special education was a mid-1970s development, and that also has contributed to additional staff for small numbers of students. So there's a number of other state and federal regulations that have contributed to smaller class size.
you mentioned that Facein was going to have a unfortunate increase because of appraisals. Numerous towns right now are going through appraisals because of the increases they're falling outside of the CLA. So how is that adapted in these calculations for the towns? Somebody that's outside of the CLA,
More towns done there, so how
Our
is-
town is one of the towns that just completed theirs.
but these appraisals are going to take years to do.
yes.
So are they getting penalized because they were appraised and they have new values, or?
Just adjusting the tax. So they're being undertaxed right now. So it's based on the fair market value of the grand list of the homes that have sold in those areas. Like, for instance, based in their grand list. So they've actually had many homes that are sold over the appraised value. So they need to equalize that, and that's how they use that with the CLA, the common level of appraisal.
Right, but during this appraisal process, there's a disparity between what's on the books. And as they're appraising it, because the appraisal takes time, up to years. You
That's
know,
what it
if
is.
you get appraised first in the reappraisal process, when does that value hit you in terms of the tax? When does it hit the town?
Well, Moretown's been appraised, so it didn't dramatically affect their tax, right? I
They
mean,
didn't have, right, they were reappraised and their tax were over 100%, so they were adjusted down. So
But the adjustment doesn't occur until all the properties have been appraised.
every
and then
single
that-
one
And then that
in
moves
the town.
forward.
So you're not seeing it here until,
till all of.
Until it's done.
Warren's- Yeah, well, we won't see it like when all of Warren is, then it'll hit. When all of Waterbury is, then it will hit. We have to have all that, everybody's appraisal has to be done. So when you say years, my brain's like 10 years, because there's
That's
so few appraisals.
typically 2 or 3 years, I believe the average is.
when Duxbury's been reappraised, has Spencer Potter started that?
Yes, so Duxbury's now in the position where some places are being reappraised with the new value. And it's like, when does their local tax rate go up? And when does it go into the pot for the school rates? That was my,
When the whole individual town is complete, not all 7 towns, all 6 towns, but one at a time.
So for example, Moortown's finished last year, and this year is the first year the state has applied their new appraisals to the formula.
so when it's reported in, it then goes into the formula for education. So Duxbury wants to delay their reporting then? Is that what you're implying?
I don't have enough, it's outside of the
Hey.
purview of the school district. I don't have enough
we just
knowledge.
wait.
I'm asking the learned school board here, you know, I'm looking for
Well,
information.
Yeah.
I'm not the appraiser. I'm not the appraiser. So I guess that's a fair question. Could somebody please get back to me on that?
Well, that would be one you would have to ask the select board, because that's not within the purview of the school board.
That's-
When they do when each town goes through their reappraisal,
No, but I'm asking when it affects
the pot.
the pot.
What affects the pot when
The whole
when the town has been complete.
Okay,
So more towns now affects the pot.
okay.
Right.
Tough to be in Moortown then, because they got the higher rates.
I know, but it looks.
They
like
got the
it.
higher appraisals.
Yes.
Yes.
School board staff are trying to- And the other thing is, I happen to be zoning administrator in Duxbury, and there's 2 stormwater mitigation projects. One of which I'm about to approve, one of which has to go to our DRB. And
This is
Who- Crossit and Harwood. Who is paying for that? Where does that money come from?
So part of that money is coming from, part of it is part of a whole process, through the state. And then part of it is going to be, 10% of it is gonna be coming out of our maintenance reserve budget.
So the school board, the school taxes are affected by the 10% of that cost. Is that what you're saying? Okay, thank you for the answer. My opinion is, I think that's 10% wasted money, my opinion. Doing that stormwater mitigation for runoff on the school parking lots at over $100,000, when you've got hundreds and hundred miles of dirt road putting stormwater into the ditches and into the stream.
Well, just to be
It's just-
clear on the Crossit Brook issue, during the flood back in July, because the creek spilled the banks, there is a conduit that runs from the creek underneath the ground to the exterior entrance of the school. So the part of the issue with, well, the full issue with the flooding is that water channel underneath in the underground conduit came up into the unit right next to the school and then flooded the school. So that's the reason that our insurance has recommended that we mitigate that issue.
Right, now that's not covered by insurance and that has to be coming, that's what's coming out of the general fund. and
Right.
then maybe-
All right, I'm not familiar with that part. I'm familiar with
That's a third part.
the subsurface infiltration and forebay mitigation application that was put in. I
Yeah.
didn't,
That we're required to do that. So what I could do is I can have Ray Daigle, our Director of Facilities, reach out to you and go through that with you. But we have all of that detail. In fact, I can have him reach out to you tomorrow.
I've communicated with Ray.
Okay.
That's okay. You don't need to. I think that is it for my notes. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
question.
Thank you for your question.
And my last comment would be, I'm just aghast that with so many people complaining about costs, that there's a total of 13 people here and 5 people online. That just shocks me.
Mhm.
That
This
just
is a
absolutely
big-
shocks me.
It's actually a big crowd for this meeting, in my experience.
But thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Thank you for your questions.
Other questions of the report or other questions? Yes.
Just to follow up to this gentleman here, who was talking about, staff to student ratio
Mhm.
and what the statewide average is. Can somebody tell me, does the state use the same 1,800 students that the calculation he asked to be done, or is the state,
Use the weighted average,
yes?
great question.
I'm not sure what he's referring to, so
Well,
no, I know, but
He heard it
it
from-
depends, it depends. So for instance, in our cost per pupil, they use the weighted average.
Right.
The state uses the weighted
But
average.
generally, they don't
but the-
use the weighted average if they're talking
For the
about straight ratios,
ratios,
because that's an
right.
exaggerated number.
Correct, so when you,
kind of like the cost per student is an exaggerated number for the same reason, in my opinion, but we don't know for sure whether the number he's comparing to is a
That's-
comparable number.
right, that's most likely head counts and enrollments, so that would be 1,813 students. It's not the weighted student.
The numbers that I've seen with our commission are numbers that are actual enrollment, not when you're talking about ratios.
Again, the numbers that I've cited were in a NPR or a Vermont Public Radio discussion. And that's where I got the information from.
Yeah, I just know it's not. I don't think it's
Apples to
crystal
apples.
clear to the public what number that is being used. My calculation on the cost per student is more like $27,000. So it depends on your
Right.
point of view, just making sure to try to get as clear information as possible.
In calculating, in the methodology for the calculation for the cost per student that AOE uses, the state uses, to be able to make sure, all the districts in the state are funded equitably.
Right.
That's why they use the weighted as student average. So an English language learner, ELL, is rated more because it's more costly to educate those students, more supplies. So in essence, been a lot of districts that have been underfunded over the years because school districts that have ELL students, English language learners, Winooski has over 200 compared to
I
Harvard.
understand that,
has
I'm
only
just not
23.
sure that many people do.
Right, that's why I wanted to just make sure that
Right.
everybody, when we're talking, there's a weighted average and then there's an enrollment number.
Anyone else with a question?
I have just a question, but I don't want to go sit in that chair.
Just speak very loudly so we can pick you up.
That weighted average, is that, that replaced the equalized pupils? Does that mean it's not equalized? So the number that you had looked like, I don't remember exactly what it was, looked quite a bit larger than our enrollment count.
Right, it's weighted based on the category of students.
It used to be weighted and then equalized so that the total number of students was the same in
It's weighted.
statewide, and is it not equalized anymore?
It's weighted across all of those different categories, and then it's on average over 2 years.
Right, but then it's not the total number of weighted students in the state is not equal to the total number of students in the state.
Correct.
No.
It used to be. That's what was equalized.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now-
I noticed the number was quite a bit larger
Right,
than
now it's,
the 1814, and that's. so-
now it's return, LTW ADM,
26
long-term weighted average.
Something, 2,600 and
Right.
something. Yeah, it's much.
And that's not a board decision. That
No,
was.
no, I know that, but so but that's gonna make any, per pupil spending, not comparable to what was being done when you're using voice.
Right, that's why in fiscal year 24, when I was projecting fiscal year 25, I had a comparison, because you really can't compare as apples to apples, because the weights are different now. And so they're not equalized, so you really can't go back and look at that. Because back then, we had 21, don't quote me on this number, but in fiscal year 24, it was like 21,000 something per student, and now we're at 15,000, so you cannot compare apples to apples because of the weights in the different categories and the additional categories.
What makes it look good, because the number's gone down, because the denominator's a lot bigger.
Exactly.
Well, we make sure we count every one of those students for us.
Oh, I know you do. In every district. but-
Yes.
Definitely.
Can I get your name and? what
Oh,
you-
I'm sorry, Steve McGill,
Okay, and where are you from?
Moortown. Recently reappraised.
Do we have another report? Or are you the report?
Is there
She's
report?
the report.
That's fine.
Yep.
No pressure.
To speak loud.
What's your name?
I can repeat
Just so
it if
you
you're
know,
not. on.
Deb Sargent from town, also recently reappraised. It wasn't that painful. Was it? No. So I just want to get a better picture of okay, how many classroom teachers would you be cutting? And what is the impact of that as far as what programs, and how that's going to impact the actual class size?
We have, the positions we have reduced are positions so that we can increase class size. So the example Lisa gave, was
Brookside.
Brookside. Brookside has, because Brookside is a school closer to scale, where we had 4 classrooms per grade. We were able to reduce to 3 classrooms per grade, some last year, some this year, and still maintain the requirements under the educational quality standards. That's harder to do in schools that Bobby mentioned, where you have 1 classroom per grade. So that is where we could make reductions. We're making a reduction in this school where we have 6 English teachers. All the other departments have 5. We're reducing 1 class that we can still provide the same educational opportunities, but class sizes will be larger. Our average will be between. I don't have the numbers right in front of me for Brookside, but we're still under those requirements, and it's still consistent with other schools. It's between 18 and 20 on average.
Or
The high school principal is increasing class size.
So no. I mean, the idea.
I don't, they haven't finished the
Right.
schedule. I had no conversations about reducing classes, but that's the challenge we're faced with when we're looking at school. One of the points raised earlier was number of staff per students. And one of the challenges we have in Vermont, and I spent the afternoon talking about this with other members of the commission, we had a meeting this afternoon, is we look very different than other states. I moved from Pennsylvania. I lived in an area where we had 5,400 students and 110 square miles. Here we have 1,800 students within 240 square miles. So with about the same number of schools. So that's where that's where some of the costs come in. If you have 5 smaller elementary schools, you're still there's core services that have to be provided. And that's one of the current conversations in the state with scale. There's a proposal on the table that there's positives and negatives to it. But one of the issues we face as a rural state is that scale. And that's one of the reasons why you see, just from my evaluation, that you see across the state in schools, a smaller staff to student ratio.
I was asking the question because I am concerned about the governor's plan.
Mhm.
And the average minimum class size of 25 kids. Which I don't think is educationally sound. So I think it's good for people looking at this budget is to actually know what the numbers are. I'd love to see our tax bill go down in Moretown, but I would want to know that kids aren't really being shortchanged when we do that.
And I can only speak for myself, but the current proposal with the funding formula would mean, with the proposed funding formula, a loss of $6.3 million to the 6 towns in our school district. And that, in my opinion, would be devastating to what we can provide kids. So I share personally and professionally some of the same concerns you have.
My mind is if I heard that we were increasing class sizes to over 25, I would be voting the budget down.
Or
So
not.
you need to know that, like, what are we getting for our tax rate?
Right, so right now we are not increasing over 25. So we are all within the quality standards. Even with Brookside, we will still be under that 25 threshold and actually I believe under 20.
Yeah, I think it's under
Under
20.
20.
Really, the most drastic thing, I think, came when we had to go to a third budget reduction last year, and we had to eliminate our language program at Brookside. That's the one place where I think that there was a lot of discussion, with the administration and the things they were having to deal with, and the board, and then our community, and whether or not, how to do that, because we were looking at how we could, we were on to our third budget at that point in time. And that was the one non-required, that we meet the standard for educational sound programming. But the fact that we're not doing anything like that this year, we can just see, while we're still having to do those kinds of reductions, a combination of things. The time that we've had, that Mike and his group, administrative group, have had to figure what are some of the ways they can do it, they really haven't had to go with. And we don't have that much left of that. We need to get our budget. That's all. So I was just going to say that does show. I mean, when we had to, that's what we did, and it was not popular, and a lot of us didn't feel great about it. Mike included. I mean, none of us felt good about that. But that's happening to other schools now. I hear other schools who are looking to bring in budgets at low percentage increases and stuff, talking about their language programs in primary and middle schools and what's happening. It's an issue for schools all over the state.
And the governor's plan is devastating. It would devastate all of our schools, and these people, this little crowd of people, we won't be here anymore. You'll have to go to that paid board of 5 people that run 47 towns that would be in our district. It is not, I can't even talk about it because my head wants to just go. So,
I've been following it pretty closely.
yeah, it's dark. It's really, really dark.
Well, that was what Mike was talking about when he said we would have to reduce our budgets by $6 million to meet the proposal.
And even if you totally eliminated every district office position and didn't have to pay for anything else, which wouldn't happen in this district, there would still, my experience with larger districts like that is there's other layers that come into play, is you'd still be looking at 40 classroom positions, 40 staff positions outside of people like Lisa and me.
We're on Article 2 to receive and act upon the reports of the district officers. As I understand, we have only one report this evening. Would anyone care to make a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Is there a
I so
second to the report?
Tori seconds.
Tori
Thank you.
Tarabella.
Now it's appropriate to have discussion further, if you wish it. Or we can vote on approving the report as given. Is there an objection to moving on to that? All in favor of approving the report given, signify with raising hands. Disapproving, anyone? The motion carries clearly, and the ayes have it. The next order of business is for the voters of the Harwood Unified Union School District to authorize the Board of School Directors to retain a public accountant to examine the accounts of the district treasurer and the Board of School Directors as of June 30th, That'd be a few months from now, June 30th, 2025. So this is a motion to authorize the school board directors to retain a licensed public accountant. So moved. And a second. Is this worthy of any discussion from any?
Is this something we do every year?
Yes.
That's been my experience, yeah.
So do we do it all those in favor?
Yeah.
Our website can be found every year.
Keeps our hands clean, as it were. Any other discussion or questions about the motion? All in favor of the voters authorize the Board of School Directors to retain a licensed public accountant to examine the accounts of the district treasurer and the school board of directors as of June 30th, 2025, signify with their hands. Any opposed? The ayes have it. I can bang the gavel if anyone needs some real. Yeah.
Official.
Our fourth article is, shall the voters of the Harwood Unified Union School District authorize the Board of School Directors under 16 VSA 562 parentheses 9 to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of the anticipated revenue for the school year? So moved. Second and a second. Discussion of this motion.
Ever, or how long has it been since we borrowed money? Do we do it every year?
We do it every year. It's called a TANA, tax anticipation note, and that's to help us with our payroll through the summer.
Approximately how much do we borrow?
In the past, we've anywhere from 2 million to 4.5 million. Since I've been here, this year we borrowed 3.5 million. The prior years was 2.5 million. And we borrow it, we earn revenue, we get it at a great rate. And we, that's revenue income for us. And I anticipate, I'm not sure what I'm projecting yet for next year. It depends on when we go out to bid and what the rate will be for income. So anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 million.
Well, we earn interest off of it too.
And that's to help
You're
us
getting
pay
sick.
Yeah.
the summer
You're
bill,
going down.
because we don't
You look
receive
sick.
taxes, until November through March.
Other questions on Article 4 for authorizing the board to borrow money against anticipated revenue? Shall I read the motion one last time so you know what you're voting on? Shall the voters of Harwood Unified Union School District authorize the Board of School Directors under 16 VSA 562-9 to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of the anticipation revenue for the school year? All in favor, signify with their hands. Any opposed? Any objections? It's a vote on all four articles. We have concluded the official business of the meeting. I suppose there's room for any other reports or things that someone wishes to bring up, even though it's not announced. However, I warn you that we may be limited in what we can discuss that wasn't warned.
Just to have
Right.
every annual meeting.
Would ask me sort of.
I have a question regarding Article 6.
Oh, that's right. We are open to discussion and clarification of the articles that are being voted on tomorrow.
If you want me to read Article 5, I'm happy to.
Does anyone have any discussion on Article 5? Questions? That's the big budget one.
I think it's clarification, I think, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe that we have not in the past had on the ballot the statistic of how much it is per student. And that came out last year from the legislature, when we got our yield, I think.
That's correct.
Requiring that this year's ballot included the amount of money and what that implication of that was per student. I always thought that was really interesting.
There was language in the past, but the legislature put that on
Okay.
hold during
Yeah.
COVID.
Per spending,
And
which
it
is
took
this much
effect now
higher
this year.
in the current year.
Backing.
Yes.
Yep.
I was gonna bring up other business, so let's.
Let's quick run through Articles 5. Other discussion on Article 5?
Yeah, as long as the topic came up, and I have said it publicly, but I'll say it again here. Last year, I think I made a point to say that there was some discussion about everyone sort of conflating equalized pupil or long-term weighted average with actual pupils. And so, it does say here, probably, I'm guessing this would be what the state is aiming at. It will result in a per pupil education spending of 15,485. So we have gone from saying equalized pupil to actually using the word pupil, which has a common meaning. And if I think everybody up here has heard my meal on it, but when I think of cost per pupil, and I've said it publicly, I think we're asking to approve $49 million and we have 1,800 students. And if you do the math per actual student, that's over $27,000. So I find it difficult to swallow the language changes and all of that, where most of the public actually is right. There's been nobody at the meetings. This is the biggest one I've seen. Which is
Steve's always at these meetings, so he knows.
which is depressing. So
It is.
it just seems to me that the state leans on all of these different ways to change property values and change weighted averages and all that. And one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons, my position is no increase in the budget is, I think it was just in the last day or two that the Democratic majority in the legislature said, don't look for any changes this year. That's going to take a while. And last year, the position was they heard us. I don't think the legislature has heard us. And I think they use a bunch of different things to make it very difficult for the average voter to know what they're voting on. So I just, whenever I get the chance, like to say, this says it's $15,000 a student. Your average layman, likely person on the street might react differently if they thought it was $27,000 a student. And I get why the state does it and what they're trying to accomplish. I'm not sure everyone does, but as long as the subject came up, that's the other side of the story.
Thank you. Should we move on to Article 6? To set the Australian ballot on the following proposition, shall the voters of Harwood Unified Union School District authorize the Board of School Directors to allocate its fiscal year 2024 unassigned audited fund balance as follows. Assign $500,000 to the school district's maintenance reserve fund per 24 VSA paragraph 2804.
There was a question on that one.
Yeah, I have a question on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Couple questions. The first is how much money is currently in the maintenance reserve fund?
It's slightly,
Approximately.
right now it's slightly below 2 million. We're still trying to finalize the Moortown claims.
I'll put it on us.
Oh,
I'm just-
The floods.
no,
So
I'm
we're
sorry.
finalizing, so we're slightly below $2 million and we have not finalized our audit for 24. I was still on the phone with the auditors today. So we are projecting, of the fund balance, I comfortably can, project 500,000 to go into the maintenance reserve.
So that's approximate, okay. What does it take to take money out of that?
The board votes on our capital projects each year, and we have not done that for forecasted for fiscal year 26 yet, because we are trying to finalize the move for the central office and how much that would cost. So our central office, where we are currently located, our lease ends at the end of next year. So for us to move into the high school or a location, we need to finalize what that would be, what cost it would be. And that would be part of our capital plan, which we will be presenting to the board either the last I think it's the last week in March, the last meeting in March. Yep.
And are there limitations on what they're allowed to use the money for?
It's capital, only capital improvement.
Fixing things, yeah.
And they can, the board can choose to use all of it for a project if they think that that's what, if
Correct.
that's best.
That's best. I present what our priorities are. And what we need to look at is we have over $20 million in immediate must needs, in deferred maintenance. And that's just skimming the surface. So there's a lot of things that we need to be doing, but looking at what we have to do right away, safety issues. I will be presenting to the board at the last meeting in March.
Really, we take the priorities and we use the money on the priorities, and Ray and Lisa come up with the priority list. And the move is because right now we pay $50,000 a year in rent at Mad River Park. That's a holdover from the last administration of school. And we're looking to eliminate that expense and bring all those people in that office into the campus at Harwood or in a multitude of little pockets potentially. I mean, that's quite a undertaking actually. But in the end, it will be an annual year-over-year savings indefinitely. So that's
And that's probably gonna come from this maintenance reserve.
yes.
I just want to ask for clarification. My tone of voice might sound like I'm upset or something.
No.
No, we just don't have that finalized.
I'm
yet.
trying to speak clearly because I don't want to sit in that chair.
No, no one wants that chair.
So looking at where those pockets are and what we need to do for HVAC and things like that, depending on the number of people that we have in those locations. So there could be some structural changes.
And I think this is where I could chime in. We do have a facilities committee now looking and working with the architects. You've seen some of the articles in the paper. This is all part of that plan. It would be foolhardy to spend money on a school that isn't going to be there. And we don't know that yet, what that's going to be. And people are asking for us to consolidate. Consolidation carries with it expenses. Because if we put more students in one building than we have room for, then we have to add to that building. So there are construction costs. The interesting thing is there are some huge savings to be realized with some of the plans. But
Huge.
but these are under discussion. It's been in committee, and the committee is making a report to the full board. And when is that? Is that last?
It's after we get through the budget.
And
And we have a lot of data. We've learned a lot and we know what a lot of things cost finally for this iteration of the board. We have, which is, there was a lot of data from the last bond where, there was a bond proposed that failed. And there were a lot of contributing factors about why it failed. But, this work we're doing now with Truex Collins, took it to another level. We looked at a million scenarios and it felt like a million, but it was really like 17. We narrowed that to 5 and then 6 being the status quo, what we have right now. And then Lisa did a weighted, applied the modeling that, puts the teachers in the building and all the expenses that go with the students to try to realize what that would look like. But Bobby said it, upfront costs, bonds. With our deferred maintenance, it's consolidation of any kind is expensive. Has to be sensitive to those communities. We know there are the articles of agreement from merging that mean there's some big hoops to jump through. Everybody's got to buy into that idea and buy into a bond. So, we're daunted, but I feel like the work was really positive and we learned we could save a ton of money. But then is the state gonna change? The state's pulling the rug out right now from under us in terms of, they have said nothing about school construction assistance. They've said a little, but it's not at the forefront, nor is the looking into changing how we do fund our healthcare for our teachers and staff, because that is enormous expense So they're not talking about that. We need to know about that. Are we gonna get help to do construction? I mean, Phil wants us to consolidate, that's for sure. With that, I mean, every district in the state's gonna need a big fat bone to do it. So I'm nervous about rolling out too much information about what could be. Because it feels it's gonna stress our community in a lot of ways, just to have that conversation. But it's coming after we pass our budget. One
And
thing
I
at a
should add,
time.
These have not been board decisions, this is in committee.
Yeah, we haven't made any decisions. All we've done is look at and narrow down and kind of put practicality in touch with all these ideas. That's what we've really done. But yes, that's a big board discussion for sure.
Am I right? We've had a discussion that goes a bit beyond the issue of assigning the $500,000
Oh, yeah.
to the maintenance reserve fund.
Yeah, I'm noticing the Aaron Burr quote here, talk less, smile more, and I was like, all I asked was what it takes to spend the money, and you guys.
Yeah, well, okay.
Lots more information.
Well, you're here, somebody came to our meeting. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
We're talking to each other all the time. We all know how frustrated we are.
That's why I'm suggesting we look at Article 6 again, since I don't think we passed it and we were discussing it, we kind of, let's get back to that and make sure we're happy with that before suddenly everyone says, hey, we need to go, and we didn't pass it, okay? So is there any objection to voting on the,
Ballot questions.
Hmm?
The ballot.
oh, I'm sorry, the ballot question. That's right, we discussed it.
Yep.
So you're right, that's why I'm confused. We're allowed to discuss it, but we can't vote on it here.
Yes.
So are there some other things to discuss?
No. That's it.
Did I just cut every?
Talk about it now.
That's okay.
Try.
I haven't been able to come to this meeting in several years because the Moortown pre-town meeting conflicted.
Yes.
In Moortown, we moved the pre-town meeting to a different date so that people would be able to come here. This is why all three of us are here.
Oh, thank you for
That's
doing
great.
that.
Thank you. Thank
A road as far from here as you can possibly get.
Okay.
But when I have been here in the past, the board members had a little nameplate in front of them.
I forgot that. That was my fault.
And
I had that bag and
I
walked
like
out.
that.
I'm sorry.
I'm just throwing it out. there.
We normally have that. I knew I was gonna
I
get,
didn't mean to call you out.
that's all right. I'm Ashley Woods and I'm the board chair.
Right.
That's me.
Well,
This
I
is,
thought of it when I asked you to say your name.
Yeah.
Bobby Rudin, I'm from Waitsfield, formerly one.
And I'm Cindy Senning, and I'm the vice chair of the board.
and Tori Taravella is, right up there in the corner.
Just spending your last 4 hours as a board member.
I know, good girl. She's,
Savoring every moment.
she's looking to get on the Waterbury Select Board right now. So we'll miss you.
You really will.
Big time.
So yes, we should have the nameplates. I blew that. I'm sorry. The whole meeting was so no agenda, no nothing. It just felt really, I got here.
And with this, yeah.
Positions open in Moortown, think about it.
Yeah, no doubt. Anybody, you show interest, that's half the battle here.
That's what we said, if you raise your
You
finger.
get dragged in, that's right. Maybe.
So, we could stay as long as we want, but if you want to feel like you've finished the business of the meeting, a movement to adjourn.
Second that motion.
Bobby have others? You mentioned you wanted to talk about something.
What we were talking about, I wanted to talk about in terms of just maintenance. It is a maintenance issue because we have all this maintenance to do, but we'll have to be
Right.
judicious about how we do it. And so we're not picking pie in the sky projects or.
Definitely not. Definitely not. And we had a winter so far, touch wood, without a flood.
There's a motion that has not been seconded, so I've allowed the discussion to continue.
Second.
Oh, there's a second to the motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion to.
And now there's 2 seconds. All in favor of, and this is not debatable under Robert's rules. So we just have to vote on whether or not you wish to adjourn. Those who wish to adjourn, raise their hands. Anyone who's opposed to adjourning, raise your hands. I would say if carries, if there's no objection, we are adjourned and you may continue your discussion.